Hey everybody, Wayne here. In today's overview and review, I'm taking a look at Prelude to Vicksburg, Chickasaw Bayou, December 26th through 29th, 1862. Designed by Stephen Oliver and published by Revolution Games. Prelude to Vicksburg is the 9th American Civil War game published by Revolution Games using the blind sword system. Originally designed by Herman Lutman. This is a two-player wargame at its heart, but is very solitaire friendly thanks to the chit-pull mechanism. Prelude to Vicksburg covers the Battle of Chickasaw Bayou, or the Battle of Walnut Hills, which was effectively the beginning and the end of the first Vicksburg campaign. The battle occurred months before the siege of Vicksburg and was the first Union attempt to reach the city. Thanks to some serious mistakes by both Sherman and Grant, it proved to be a lopsided victory for the Confederates, with the Union suffering 10 times the casualties and achieving none of their objectives for the campaign. Let's do a quick overview. I have a complete playthrough of a scenario for an in-depth look at the game. I'll cover my pros and cons, and we'll end with my final thoughts. All right, let's get down to the table. All right, so before we get started, I just want to point out that I'm not going to do an incredibly in-depth overview of the game because I've already made tutorial videos for this system, not this game, but this system, the blind sword system, for Thunder at Dawn and for Longstreet Attacks. Those are two of my more popular videos anyway, so check those out if you want to see in detail, zoomed in camera, how to play this game. Okay, so it is obviously a hex encounter game. It relies on chit-pull for activation. You are going to generate a chit cup each turn. That is going to be during the command decision phase, and you're going to be drawing from it. There's going to be leaders in there, there's going to be events, and there's going to be special chits that the game has. Now, when you draw a leader, very, very simple. There's different types of leaders. Guys like, say, the CIC, Commander-in-Chief. We have Pemberton here. Or we have, in this game, Sherman for the Union. Now, they have a command rating number. You're going to roll against command rating to see if they can activate divisions or brigades underneath them. Now, besides the CICs, so the commander-in-chief, right, you're going to have actual division commanders. So, for example, for the Confederates, S.D. Lee, and he has a 4 command rating. And then you have somebody like Morgan. Morgan for the Union has a 3 command rating. You're going to roll against that to see if you can activate their brigade. If you are successfully roll that number or less, you can give them an order. The game has different orders you can give your brigades. They are attack, defend, maneuver, or regroup. Based on those orders, it's going to change their movement points. It's going to decide whether they can actually engage with the enemy, which is move adjacent. If they can, what kind of combat they can engage in, if they can, and then if they can try to rally, recover, or rebuild their unit. Or if you do not roll successfully for the full activation, so if you roll above that number that I showed you, they can only do a limited activation, which means they can only conduct fire combat. So turn to turn, you're never going to know which units are you going to be able to activate and then what they're going to be able to do that turn. Now, when I talked about the brigades, I talked about the regiments, right? You may say, well, which ones are which? Well, I do have the Grand Assault scenario. The game comes with, I believe, 6 scenarios. I have Grand Assault set up here. You can see different colors for the different brigades. Whether it's Blair here has kind of a reddish brown, yellow for Thayer, Thomas for the Confederates is in blue, etc. That's going to help you tell at a glance. Now it also has the each unit is going to have the commander name at the top. It's going to have information on where it comes from. It's going to have information on its attack. It's going to have information on its cohesion rating. And it's going to tell you what kind of weapon it has. So for instance, Barton here, this unit, which is the leader of Barton, now he has, right, multiple regiments down here, is the 43rd Georgia. It is an infantry unit. You can tell it's from Georgia, not only because GA, but obviously it has these state silhouette behind it. He has 8 combat strength, 8 strength points. He has a 3 cohesion rating, which is, think of that as sort of the experience, the elan, the training, everything kind of combined to say, hey, is this unit going to break in combat or is it going to kind of hold together better? And then also you can see the R next to it shows that it is a rifled musket unit. So for infantry, they could have smoothbore muskets, carbines, or rifled musket. There's also artillery, smoothbore cannon, rifle cannon, mixed cannon, or a 20-pound Parrott cannon in this game. And not every game is going to have certain types of units. Some are only going to be, it just depends. It's all historical based on what kind of units were available or were at that particular battle. Now, you can see I have, like I said, I have a unit set up here. I have the full map out here, and starting off, you can see we have the Confederates guarding Walnut Hills or Chickasaw Bluff down here. They have fortifications. The Union is moving through abatis and also through open areas. There are bayous. There are a couple lakes. The terrain, we have heavy woods, light woods, marsh. This map, obviously, for movement-wise, is very restricted, right? And that was part of that battle, and it's represented here in this game. So, all right, now that I described the units, we'll run through the sequence of play real quick. So I mentioned the command decision phase. That is where you are building the chit cup that you're going to be drawing from. The game's going to tell you the certain leaders you can have each turn. You are then going to pick from random events, lots of different events. I have some of them lined up over here. You can do things like you can do a rally, command confusion, good ground, which is like a defensive one. There's a whole bunch of different events for both sides. You're going to fill the cup up. You're going to set it aside for now because you're then going to go into the artillery phase. In blind swords, the artillery, you take turns. Units go first, firing or moving one artillery unit at a time. Union, Confederate, etc., back and forth until all artillery are have attacked or have moved. Then you go to the chit draw phase. So that's where we're going to start drawing from this cup, and you're going to figure out, are you activating a brigade, or are you having a special event happen? Is it, you have the wild chit? Do you have fog of war? You never know what exactly is going to happen. Okay, so you get a unit, the brigade activation phase, right? You get one of those leaders, you draw Morgan here, you know, you're the Union player, you draw Morgan. Okay, you roll, here's what happens. If you figure out, okay, get that full activation, so you order his command rating number or lower, you get to provide an order. That's where I mentioned the attack, defend, maneuver, regroup. Give it to that brigade. You now they conduct the steps. Now, in this game, fire combat comes before movement. Not completely crazy, but just remember that. So it'll be any fire combat, if eligible, movement, then close combat if you're adjacent, and a rally step, again, if that's part of the order you're allowed to. And then if there's any chits left in the cup, you go ahead and draw another chit. Once all the chits have been drawn and used, you're going to have an end phase, is where any held chits, because some can be held, some can't, you're going to play them, check for victory points. You're going to flip over your activated brigade markers, which they're kind of off camera over here on the left. Basically, it's just a way to help keep track of which brigades have been activated or not. You have a broken track, so any units that have been suffered a break test, so through combat, have been removed from the map, they potentially can come back on the broken track. In this particular game, you have the fallen timber reduction step. So with the abatis out here, right, the Union had engineers, had pioneers working to get through that abattis to reduce it so they could get their soldiers through to actually attack the Confederates. After all that, advance the game turn marker and move on to the next turn and see where you're at. So I know that was a very broad explanation of the game. The only thing I'm going to cover quick is combat. So I mentioned kind of the fire combat, close combat. Combat in blind swords, I really like it, and which I'll go more detail in my pros, cons, and final thoughts. Basically, you have a CRT. You're going to roll the white and red. Red first, white second, and you'll put them side by side, right? So we've talked about this in other games. So for instance, that 1-5, that would be 15. If it was, like this, it'd be 2-4, that's 24, right? So side by side, so anything from 11 to 66. You're going to roll on a column for which is strength point, so pretty standard, right? Well, there's going to be numbers, colored numbers within that column. There's going to be either almost like a blank, just a dash. There's going to be green, yellow, or red potentially. That number in the colored little column is going to be what you check the cohesion rating on. So if you have a 10 to 11 and you roll a 66, you can see at the very bottom there, red 0 to 4, yellow is 5, green is 6. That's whatever the cohesion rating of that unit is, where you are going to roll on then the cohesion test table. So a unit that has a lower cohesion, right, less experienced, more poor leadership, whatever the case may be, right, that's kind of balanced within the historical realities of that unit. And then with the game, you're going to again conduct a cohesion test. Green is routine, yellow is tough, red is severe. Obviously, the red one, severe, not as easy for the defender as the routine. But you're going to roll, and what you're going to do is you're going to roll the 2 dice again. The red one is going to give a depletion result, so depleting a unit or units, which flips them from their front fresh side to their back battle-worn side. And then the white die is the skedaddle result, which would be something like retreating, and then any morale hits, which is disrupted markers, things like that. Again, back and forth, drawing chits each turn. You conduct a bunch of combat, maneuvering, hopefully having your orders followed, but you're going to have those die rolls. There's going to be some chaos involved in the game. And yeah, that's the American Civil War, mid-19th century battles for you. So I think that's a good enough explanation. Again, quick and dirty, but that's okay. I got a lot of other videos. In fact, I have multiple videos on this game as well. You can watch my playthrough of the one scenario of this game, or you can check my tutorial videos for the other games, Long Street Attacks and Thunder at Dawn, to really see an explanation of how to play. If you're really like, you know what, I'm going to learn how to play, I have videos for that. Otherwise, I think that's it. Let's go on to the pros and cons. As always, cons first. All right. First off, the series rulebook for Blind Swords continues to lag a bit on clarity and ease of use. You know, we're seeing more and more rulebooks in full color with plenty of pictures examples. The Blind Swords series rules have neither. Although I'd say the game, right, this system is a solid medium complexity with a pretty extensive combat system, I think the rulebook, as is, can and has put some people off the game by making it a little harder to learn than it should be. It can also be hard to reference or find a specific rule you're looking for, although recently they've started including indexes, which can obviously help for, referencing. Although I played so much Blind Swords at this point, the rulebook is what it is for me, right? Like, I know how to play, I know how to look things up, I know where I'm going to find things. When I do these reviews, I'm also trying to look at it from the perspective of a new wargamer or someone new to the series, and I wouldn't mind seeing a revamp of the series rules, or even just a makeover. And just kind of compare it. So with the series rules, it's black and white. Again, there's basically no pictures. It's all just text. Now you have the exclusive rules specifically for Prelude to Vicksburg, and every game will have an exclusive rules. It's in color. Look, there's color picture examples of, line of sight. And now maybe it's primarily line of sight rules just because they want to make sure, understand the terrain of that particular battle and the line of sight, which is obviously always appreciated. But you already have kind of a step up from that exclusive rules, right? The game rules versus the series rules. The second thing I want to mention was small, but I did notice on my source when reading about the battle, which I'll talk about a little bit later in my final thoughts, it did present some information that one of the scenarios, the one that I covered in my playthrough, is maybe a little different than what's in the exclusive rules and the scenario book for this game. Again, I talk about it in the playthrough. It's a small difference in the order of battle and then kind of how spirited a particular skirmish or fight was. Who's correct? I don't know enough about the battle to say. I'll absolutely defer to the designer, Stephen Oliver, who no doubt did a lot of research for the battle. And as everything else I have read seems to align with his design and his interpretation of the battle. Okay, that's it for the cons. On to the pros. First off, I love this map. Now, don't get me wrong. Edmund Hudson has done a great job with the maps for the Blind Sword series ever since Rick Barber passed. But Stephen Oliver, designer and artist, apparently, really knocked it out of the park with this one. In fact, Prelude to Vicksburg was released at the same time as Sedgwick Attacks, and although the topic of that game initially interested me more, it's the map for this game that caught my eye. Then once I began reading about the battle and everything that led up to it, I was hooked. Just look at this map. And I know there's units and some dice on here, but in fact, even with the units, which I'll talk about in a second, I think it just looks fantastic. Artwork's beautiful. Terrain is obvious and clear. Hex sides are clear. You know exactly what you're getting when you're moving around. And it just pops, but it's not too bright, right? It doesn't distract. You can see the units very clearly when you're sitting there, especially, and then maybe on camera, it could be harder with hex encounter. I can never tell. But when you're sitting there, I have no problems, sitting here and looking and seeing, and even units up here, absolutely no problem with it. Speaking of which, kind of related, so second, I continue to love the overall graphical presentation of these games. The combat unit, they look fantastic with that state silhouette. They're clear, easy to read on the board. I like the leaders' portraits on their chits. It's fun to draw a chit, see their portrait and roll for the activation. It just, this is one of those games that when it's set up on the table, it just wows. And those little touches just bring you in. I feel like it just thematically draws you in when you have these American Civil War games. Like, I don't know, there's something about the history I feel like that just draws you in, and those little things, those portraits, those state silhouettes, they just help with that tremendously. Third, the combat resolution system in Blind Swords, it just feels perfect. You know, I've never had so much fun looking up column shifts. The mechanism of rolling the 2 dice when initially checking the CRT, comparing that to a unit's cohesion rating to see if a cohesion test is conducted. That mechanism helps adjust combat results based on a unit's experience and morale. Not all regiments were equal, and this game, this system simulates that. You know, keeping in mind a regiment or a unit that is all alone also will have a lower cohesion rating, as is considered unsupported, while if it's adjacent or it's stacked with friendly units, it will have its full cohesion rating. You know, again, that's, think back to American Civil War, you know, a lot about that. Basically, regiments, I mean, they wanted to be supported. They wanted to have fellow regiments there. If they didn't, if they were all alone, they were the ones that were most likely to retreat. You know, after you do that initial roll for the CRT, then you roll those 2 dice again, each having a different purpose. You know, the first I mentioned being depletion, and the second being skedaddle, which I love the word, by the way, which helps resolve the combat with both a possible physical effect, you know, depleting a unit, flipping it to its battle-worn side, or that retreat or morale hits. It sounds complicated, but it's not. You know, once you're comfortable with the combat resolution system, which does take some time, again, I'd say this system is a solid medium level complexity. But once you're comfortable with it, you gain a level of detail and satisfaction that you may otherwise only find in a much heavier game that takes, you know, a week to play from start to finish instead of a day or 2 for the full campaign, or the full scenario. It's the type of system that just makes you feel like you're playing an American Civil War game. All right, that's it for my pros and cons. Let's end with my final thoughts. Prelude to Vicksburg, Chickasaw Bayou is a fantastic game. It utilizes the blind sword system, which I already love, which I believe does a great job modeling American Civil War battles. The production is beautiful, with a gorgeous map that is evocative of the late Rick Barber's work. And with 6 scenarios, ranging from a small 2-brigade skirmish all the way up to the grand assault, the game has a ton of variety and replayability. The scenarios also range from historical to what-ifs. Not only is the game itself a joy to play thanks to the system it's built on, and the custom Chrome Stephen Oliver has built into this particular game, it's one of the most solitaire-friendly series I've had the pleasure of playing. The uncertainty of that chit-pull and the leader activations means you're never sure what formation will be activated next, or even if they will be able to take a full action that turn. Stephen Oliver has done a wonderful job creating a playable simulation of this chaotic Western theater battle. The uniqueness of the battle, thanks to the terrain and the heavy use of abatis, is handled with just the right amount of Chrome. You get an order of battle showcasing different units and command structures, all with a few easy-to-play unique rules. Those factors also make the game a great choice for veterans of the blind sword system. If you'd like to know more about the Battle of Chickasaw Bayou and the history around it, I recommend the Chickasaw Bayou campaign by Major Gray Gildner. This is a printed version of his research paper that he wrote for the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College. It's under 200 pages, so it's not a long read, but he gives you a good overview of the strategic situation in the Western theater as the idea of sending a Union force to Vicksburg first takes shape. He covers not only the battle, but the reasons as why it was a failure for the Union, and that even the Confederates missed opportunities after the battle and possibly learned the wrong lesson from their victory. Overall, I think it makes an excellent companion to this game. Thank you to everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video review. Please let me know what you think of my video and this game in the comments below. And until next time, everyone, later.